Three, two, one. Welcome to Convergence. I'm Hoque Zafer, and I'm here with my co-host Faisal Hoque. Convergence is the show where we explore the intersection of technology, leadership, and the human spirit. Now, Faisal, you recently laid out a provocative 90-day roadmap in Fast Company to jumpstart AI transformation. It's a plan that ignores the tech hype and focuses on what you call the 4 pillars: leadership mindset, organizational design, capital allocation, and the innovation pipeline, which certainly does sound intriguing, and we're going to get into it in just a minute. But before we dive into the roadmap, I've got 3 questions for you, everyone that's listening and watching and are with us today. I want you to think as we talk about 3 components. One is the strategic gap. If you think about it, are you chasing AI because it's a trend? Or have you actually identified the specific business bottleneck that AI is meant to solve? Quite a difficult question to answer, maybe for some of you. The second is the safety net. Does your company's culture actually allow for failure? Or are your current incentives quietly killing every experiment before you can even understand what data it will yield and if there is a possible positive solution? The last one is the 90-day reality. So we're going to be talking today about transformation in 90 days, and this is about 90-day reality. If you don't build the machinery for innovation today, where will you be in 3 months? And this is a huge consideration when you're thinking about your competitors and if they may have already moved past pilot phases to scale. So let's get back into it, Faisal. In the article, you argue that most companies won't have an idea problem, that they have a portfolio problem. So the thing that I was curious about as well when we agreed on speaking about this article is that 90-day is it's this number that always appears, right? And then I started thinking about 90 days. So typical sort of challenge that you give any individual as a task and maybe an interview is, okay, can you now produce a 30, a 60, a 90-day plan so that we can understand your approach to transformation, essentially leading change in the organization. And then I thought about, well, if you actually look at the development of the AI space in the 90 days, to be able to compete at a speed similar to what has happened in 90 days in the space is actually an ask that is insane. And I'll tell you why, just to highlight. In the last 90 days, we've had the end of reasoning and agentic AI. So the whole market has pivoted from large language models to reasoning models and agentic AI. We've had so many major releases from all types of major vendors. We've had the whole rise of agents. So AI is no longer just answering questions, it's really executing workflows. We've got the regulatory element that's hardening. We've got the human debt intent in the sense of like agentic liability. We've got new legal debates that are surfacing if an AI agent signs a bad contract, who's legally bound. And as well, we've also got the financial maturity in terms of monetization and the ROI pressure that investors are now pushing for this exploratory AI spend and rewarding disciplined adoption. So if we take the last one that's come about in the 90 days, which is interesting, how does a CEO, from your perspective, then try and understand how to encourage their organization to actually adopt a framework like this?
If you look at what I've described in that article, it's not about pursuing specific technology for a specific technological implementation. This is about having that discipline and capabilities that you can actually infuse in the organization so that every 90 days you can keep going. So if you look at the last phase of 90 day, we call it Ignite. And just let's read out the 4 steps that I've described. We talked about launching your first experimentation, right? And establishing a mechanism for long-term operation, stress test your organizational design, begin the second cycle of those experimentation, because the vendors are already giving you the technology. So you don't have to worry about building your own technology. Most are going to take those technology and make an application out of it. You're not the creator. I mean, you're basically the adapter or a consumer of the technology that's coming to the play. You could take a large language model and build an application out of it, but you need the discipline to decide which application to build. How does that application drive revenue or productivity or enhance my people's capabilities? That should be your focus, but that requires much more critical and deeper thinking process and mechanism as an organization as a whole, not just as an individual. So the CEO's job is to take a framework like this and making sure that it becomes part of the organizational DNA, not just a one-time thing, because in next 90 days, all the things that you just talked about, we're going to see the next iteration of all that. But this fundamental challenge of getting the organization mobilized, that doesn't go away regardless of the technology. This is a bigger issue than technology itself. So we're not really trying to solve a 90-day plan for what application you develop. That's unique to you. But how to figure out how do you get there to make the decision what to build? And do I have the organizational leadership and management capabilities and innovation capabilities to make that happen for myself, right? So that's what this 90-day plan is about.
Yeah, I think it's the end outcome of trying to understand if you actually have the innovation capabilities is one of the biggest outcomes of the identification and understanding is the purpose and the process.
Depending on the size, this happens in both entrepreneurial companies, but it also happens in large companies. In reality, you actually have too many ideas because people are very aware these days about what are the new tech that's coming. And every time you see a new tool, well, I could do this, I could do that, I could do that. So before you know it, you have almost too many ideas. What people miss is that, well, how does that idea moves you to create better product, better service, better customer care? Or how does it allow me to leverage the resources that I already have, and increase my capability, core capabilities, right? That's actually much more harder than anything else. So when we talk about pipeline, it's really evaluating all those ideas and mapping against the opportunities that will actually drive value, however you want to define value, because everybody's value definition is different.
Are you convinced that people do have a lot of ideas? Now, I've got my own opinion, given the fact that I have seen this in reality in practice, as most of our listeners know. I am the CEO of an organization. I do have an insight into the practical application and obviously the positives and the negatives of the implementation of AI. Why are you convinced that people have a lot of ideas?
That's a great question. Because of your role and because of what I do with my various companies, we are constantly innovating, right? And it's probably not the right thing to say that everybody's innovating and everybody has coming out with nonstop ideas. But if you look at an individual level, especially the high performing individual, they do have lots of ideas. Often enough, what gets missed is that their individual ideas doesn't get mapped into the organization's overall goal and aspiration where they want to go with their product, service, or customer acquisition, et cetera, et cetera. So, and if you talk about Laggard, you're really talking about Laggard because what you're really saying that does everybody have good ideas? Well, the people who doesn't have the idea, they're Laggard because you need inspiration, you need vision, and you need ideas to move forward. So when we looked at that 90-day plan, which we're about to talk about, it was really to jumpstart the process of not just ideation, but also funneling through the ideas so that you can really focus on the core things that will actually add value to your organization.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear and talk a little bit more about that because, again, I've seen in practice that sometimes a lot of organizations, especially more complex matrix organizations, they actually tend to start with easier hits that will actually continue through the testing phase, moving from POV to actually deploying it full, which can take anything up to 2 months to 4 months to 6 months, depending on the complexity and obviously the buy-in that's necessary from each business unit or the whole organization as such. Now, in situations like that, what is then the advice to an organization? Because also in the 90-day plan, and we go back just to the original question about the portfolio problem and not an idea problem, how can then a company understand that their AI portfolio might be unbalanced? And why is this unbalanced element actually a real problem for an organization, especially in this type of market?
Yeah, I'll break it down in 90 days since we're talking about the 90 day. By the way, 90-day is not to transform your organization because you can't. 90 days to actually ignite a machinery that allows you to do constant transformation. When we talk about the 90-day, first 30 days, it's really about diagnosing, meaning you diagnose your purpose and not diagnosing your technology, or diagnosing what is your purpose as an organization and how do you go about creating that value that you want to create for your customer, especially in a nonstop changing environment and uncertain environment that we live through today between the geopolitics and technological changes, et cetera, et cetera. So then you have to say, okay, diagnose your organization's relationship to change. Are you willing to change because of the fact that you have an updated purpose or updated vision, right? And then you have to look at, kind of diagnose your current activity and current spending plan, right? So when you're saying about quick hits, right? So you have to say, okay, how many quick hits do we are experimenting? And is it going to really give you the yield to the right ROI? And often a lot of these experimentation, when you're saying that, people are ideation, it's not, most people, what I've seen is a human tendency, right? You get a new tool, you play with the tool, but you don't really know why you're playing with the tool. If you say, I'm really playing with a new video creation tool because it's not cool, but I want to create some corporate video for training, that puts a different lens to the same experimentation. So auditing your current innovation activity and spend is the other diagnosis. And the last step to diagnosing is that map your decision right, in the sense that who makes the decision about what things that you should be looking in the short term, medium term, and the long term basis, and how do you define ROI, and who needs to own the project, and who needs to lead that, and who needs to decide that this is going to add the value that maps into your vision and mission and your ROI that you have defined. So that's basically your 30 days. So within the 30 days, you can have a complete, like a current state assessment of your organization's activity and the things that you want to accomplish, right? And then you can move on to the next 30-day or maybe 20 days plan, which we call the organize. And I'm going to stop there so we can ask what the next question before.
No, I mean, I'm pondering on it, on everything that you say as well. And again, taking it from the perspective of observation and also interpretation in what's happening in the field and the market as well. So I think that what you have highlighted, Faisal, is that it's a jump start in the sense of an ignition to make sure that a company can actually carry out this transformation in the 90 days. And I suppose the thing that I'm pondering at the moment is that, and it's more from a philosophical and advanced thinking perspective, the ability to enter into that diagnostic phase, as you've highlighted, you also argue that culture is the primary barrier for advancement or a possible flow in the transformation frame.
I mean, think about from this perspective. If you say, look, I want to be in better health, let's use that as an example because we can all understand that. First, you have to diagnose what are the things that you want to improve. Is it weight loss? Is it that you want to have more energy, et cetera, et cetera? And then you come out, kind of get organized around that. So similarly, the diagnosing phase of this 90-day plan is really to get a sense of what is it that you want to improve and what are the deficiency that you have to for that improvement process. So leading is one element of it because you have to lead a group to do that. And then you have to infuse that same philosophical tenet and value equation and the work ethics and the prioritization in the entire organization. That's what really defines as culture. If you don't have that, then you cannot move forward. So that's actually where, when we talk about the next phase of these 90 days, we call it organized, right? So you can think about like in 20 days, like day 31 to day 50, you can get organized around ownership, the culture, the incentive structure, and establishing a reoccurring rhythm for going through this improvement plan, not the actual improvement, but the improvement plan. Because it's like if you want to run a marathon, you have to prepare for it, right? So, and it's really a relay. Transformation is relay. It's not a sprint, right? So this 90-day next phase organizing is really preparing the culture so that you can get the right alignment and right incentive in place to go to the next phase of preparation. And then you can get to the ignition phase of getting things mobilized.
Of course, but let's say you run into an unexpected diagnosis in the sense that you identify that there's more of a culture of fear of skepticism. And this could be a sort of demographical issue in the organization where there is maybe a resistance to digital transformation on the whole. There's also still a lot of fear that is associated with not only AI, but technology, especially from an automation perspective. Can you still then progress, in your opinion, to day 31 to 50? But then how do you address the sort of human debt? And this is a funny term, but like, how do you address that issue then?
If you look at those, when we are saying organize and prepare after you're doing the diagnosis, the organizing and preparation is really about the organizational preparation. It's preparing the culture and the mindset and the buy-in, the incentive structure, the decision criteria, the realignment in terms of what's really important and not important, allocating the setting of the criteria for allocation of funding. This all, stems from the diagnosis. So if you're saying that diagnosis came back and told us that the organization is not ready from a cultural point of view because there's all sorts of inertia going on, fear factor, not aware of what's going on in the competitive landscape, etc. You have to prepare the organization from that context. Let's take another angle to it. If you say, look, organizations are all on board and ready to do that, but technologically, they're not prepared in the sense that you don't have baseline data, as an example, to do what you want to do. You have to prepare and modulate your preparation and organization around that. So diagnosis should give you like a navigation, whether you should go and fix your culture, fix your data, fix your leadership, fix your system, whatever the case may be. So regardless of wherever you are, diagnosis gives you the navigational direction, and preparation and your organization gives you that readiness so that you can ignite that portfolio that we keep talking about. So the last phase of it, last 20 days which of the 90-day plan, you basically start your ignition based on your current state. And by the way, it's very unique for each organization, right? So this is just a framework to do that. And people are going to be in a various place from a technological point of view, organizational point of view, and leadership point of view. But this ignite phase is when you start kind of preparing that portfolio. But you cannot start preparing your portfolio if you haven't gone through those first three phases of diagnosis and preparation and organization.
Yeah, much so. And I think that it goes back to the element that you've highlighted around the uniqueness of an organization. There's also, though, because you've mentioned the second cycle. So day 90 is like described as the key to the ignition.
Mm-hmm.
That is a transition point as well that a lot of organizations fail to go from the actual 90-day discovery periods that has unlocked certain components of opportunity to innovation as well. What's the single most common reason that people should identify if they're going to undertake this 90-day opportunity that you would say would make them fail to transition from the first 90 days to actually
Sure.
sustainable, permanent
Yeah.
engine that is
Yeah.
driven by innovation?
It's a great question, Lauren. It's very much on point because think about this. After 90 days, let's say you have like a team of a couple of hundred people, or let's say even 100 people, right? We won't get into the very large enterprises, but let's say you have 100 people, and let's say that 100 people are divided into your marketing, sales, product development, whatever the case may be, right? And each group has an idea or multiple ideas that how to use AI to enhance their capability. After 90 days, you should start funneling those ideas in one place whereby you can see what are these ideas. And you should have a mechanism to rack and stack based on your organizational goal to basically rank them, which ideas are the most important ideas that you should be pursuing on. So this process should be established by 90 days because then you're collaboratively producing a pipeline of ideas that's getting racked and stacked, that's getting funded based on the priority, based on the outcome. And then you can measure the development, the testing and deployment, and generating value out of that model, which goes to the next 30, 60, 90 days cycle. But once you establish this mechanism, that becomes your engine of innovation. And that becomes an ongoing, everlasting, evergreen funnel of idea to value creation, right? But if you don't have that, then you'll be always doing this scattered experimentation that everybody's doing and not getting any value out of the investment that they're making.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that it validates as well is, as you said, the diagnosis component, the first 30 days, like the day 1 to 30, the diagnostic is really the necessity and the opportunity to gain core clarity, because AI transformation, it often reveals that a company's purpose was never actually understood by its employees once you go to the nitty-gritty of the diagnostic of the organization.
Absolutely. And you can take listen, tools are good as the value it creates, not what it can do, right? So it can do many things, and nobody actually use 100% of the functionality of any software. It becomes a unique thing for each enterprise. So the trick is to figuring out which functionality maps to your value creation and focus on that and then make something out of it, right? I mean, a doctor's usage of, let's say, a video generation versus a teacher's need for video generation are completely two different things, right? Same tool, different application. And you have to focus on that value creation. And this whole framework is about ideation to value creation, but keep it evergreen so that you can create an engine of innovation.
Okay. So the article, How to Jumpstart Your Company's AI Transformation in 90 Days, it is available on Fast Company. So I would encourage everyone that's joined us in this conversation to actually go and read it in detail and reach out to Faisal, to myself, if you want to explore it a little bit further. Thank you, Faisal.
Thanks, Lauren. Great conversation.